My fiancé said, "I'm pregnant and not sure who the father is." I replied, "Then we are done." Then I froze our accounts, walked out without raising my voice, sat down with her father and the other man's wife, and I just watched as her affair took down her family's company piece by piece. You are listening to Family Tales. This story is about a man who comes home at 3 in the morning and discovers his fiancée is cheating with a coworker tied to her father's company. As you listen, ask yourself at which moment you would have walked away. My flight was never supposed to land before sunrise. I had spent the whole day in meetings that could have been emails, then half the night in an airport that smelled like reheated pizza. When they finally canceled my flight and offered hotel vouchers, I did not even think about the hotel. I just wanted to go home. No one expected me back. Not my coworkers, not my friends, and definitely not my fiancée, Sierra. That should have felt cozy, like I was about to surprise the person who missed me the most. Instead, the thought felt heavy in my chest. Driving through the city at 3 in the morning, the streets looked like a paused movie. Empty sidewalks, red lights blinking for no one. It felt like the world had gone still, and I was the only one who had not gotten the memo. When I turned onto our street, I saw our house sitting quiet in the dark. Every window was black except one, our bedroom, a warm glow leaking through the curtains. I smiled for a second, thinking she had fallen asleep with a movie on again. That smile died at the front door. As I put the key in the lock, the door opened from the inside. A man I had never seen before stood there, barefoot, wearing only jeans. He froze when he saw me, like someone had hit pause on his body. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Then he turned his head toward the hallway and called out, casual and loud, like he lived there, "Baby, someone's here to see you." From the bedroom, I heard Sierra's voice, groggy, playful, the kind of voice she usually saved for me. "Tell him I'm asleep." He hesitated, muttered something I could not hear, then brushed past me and headed straight for the back door. No apology, no explanation. He did not even look at me. I could have grabbed him, asked his name, swung a fist. Instead, I just stood there and listened to the sound of the door closing behind him. Sometimes the quiet after a hit is worse than the hit itself. This was that kind of quiet. Sierra appeared in the hallway wearing one of my shirts. Her hair was messy, her face pale. At first, she looked confused to see me. Then she looked terrified. "Why are you home early?" she asked, like I was the one breaking the rules. I walked past her without answering and sat at the kitchen table. I put my phone face down in front of me and said nothing. I wanted her to feel every second of that silence. She started talking fast. First, she said it was the neighbor checking on her. When that did not land, it became her cousin. Then, somehow, she did not know who the man was at all. 3 different stories in a few minutes. When someone changes their story that many times, believe their pattern, not their words. She kept going, one lie tripping over another until she ran out of space. Then came the tears. Maybe they were real. Maybe they were not. I could not tell anymore. She asked if we could talk in the morning, that she would explain everything then. I told her I would stay just for the night. Her relief was instant, too instant. She thought "I'll stay tonight" meant "I forgive you." It did not. She went upstairs eventually. I stayed in the kitchen. There was a half-empty glass of wine on the counter with a faint lipstick stain on the rim. Next to it, I noticed a set of car keys. The metal keychain caught the kitchen light, a small engraved logo I knew too well. Blake Construction, Sierra's father's company. I picked it up and turned it in my hand, tracing the initials, HBC, Harold Blake Construction. I had worked there years ago, before Sierra and I even started dating. I knew their branding by heart. Whoever that man was, he worked for her father. It was not just infidelity. It was careless, arrogant, stupid. I left before sunrise. I did not wake her. I did not take luggage, just my phone and my wallet. Sitting in my car, I noticed another vehicle parked 2 houses down, a silver sedan with the same Blake Construction logo on the windshield sticker. While I watched, a bedroom light flickered on upstairs. A shadow moved. A few minutes later, the same man from the doorway came out, walking fast toward the silver sedan, glancing around before driving off. My chest did not burn. It went cold. That was the moment I understood something important. Sierra had not been scared of being caught. She had been sure she would not be. That kind of confidence comes from getting away with something for a long time. When she woke up later that morning, I was gone, but I made sure the silence stayed with her. Every joint account was frozen, every credit card canceled, passwords changed. Some people would call that petty. In reality, it was protection. People who lie like that do not suddenly become honest when they are scared. By 9 in the morning, I was sitting in a coffee shop near Blake Construction's downtown offices. I had not slept, but my mind felt sharp and focused. I still had access to an old contact database from my time there. I scrolled through the employee list until one name jumped out: Justin Wardell, project manager, married, 2 kids. I remembered him from a company barbecue. Loud laugh, flashy watch. The type who called women sweetheart in a way that never quite felt respectful. Sierra had not chosen someone better than me. She had chosen someone convenient, close enough to feel exciting, safe enough to pretend it was temporary. By the time I got home that afternoon, my phone was full of missed calls and texts from her. She said we needed to talk, that it was not what I thought, that we should fix it before things got worse. She had no idea that worse had already started. When I finally walked back into the house, she was sitting on the couch, trying to look calm. Her phone lay face down on the coffee table. The screen kept lighting up with messages she pretended not to see. I told her she did not need to explain anything. She blinked, confused, until I added that I had already spoken to her father. I had not spoken to him yet, but her face did all the talking for her. The color drained out of her. Her breathing changed. Her eyes went glassy. In that moment, I realized something. She was not afraid of losing me as much as she was afraid of disappointing him. Sometimes the real triangle is not between 3 lovers. It is between a partner, their family, and you. I went upstairs, packed a small bag, and left again without telling her where I was going. Driving toward the city that night, I understood the real ending was not when I caught her cheating. It was the moment I decided I would never forgive her. Forgiveness, I realized, is something you give when you still have hope. I had none left. Only plans. The first plan started the next morning. I walked into Harold Blake Construction around 9. The receptionist recognized me and told me Harold was in a meeting. While I waited in the lobby, employees rushed by with blueprints and coffee. Then I saw him. Justin. He was on his phone, voice low and irritated. When he finally looked up, he saw me and froze with that same caught expression he had worn at my front door. He stammered a greeting and disappeared down the hallway. I smiled for the first time since that night. When Harold came out of his meeting, he greeted me warmly, asked about my trip, joked that Sierra had been glued to her phone, waiting for me to come home. The irony almost made me laugh. I told him the flight had been canceled and I got home early. Then, casually, I mentioned seeing Justin and said I was glad he was mentoring Sierra's team. Harold frowned. He said Sierra did not work under Justin's department. There was no reason for them to be in close contact outside of board events. That look on his face was my first real proof. Before I left, Harold invited both of us to dinner later that week to talk about the wedding and some family developments. I agreed, knowing that dinner would be the stage. When I got home, Sierra was pacing the living room. Her eyes were red. She kept checking her phone. The moment she saw me, words poured out. She said she was worried. She said we needed to talk before her dad heard anything. Too late. I told her to sit down, calm, no shouting. I opened my laptop on the coffee table and pulled up our shared account. Hotel bookings in her name. My card. 3 months back. 2 cities. Multiple weekends. The same weekends she told me she was visiting her mother. She stared at the screen like it was another language. When she started denying, I opened the drawer beside the couch and placed the Blake Construction keychain on the table. Her face went blank. She said she had made mistakes, that Justin was helping her through a rough time, that she felt neglected, that it did not mean anything. Every line sounded rehearsed. At this point, many people would argue or beg or negotiate. He chose to collect facts instead. When she finally ran out of excuses, I told her something she did not expect. Justin's wife, Laura, had called me that morning. Laura had found messages between Sierra and Justin on their shared tablet. She was not angry in the way Sierra feared. She sounded tired, like someone who had been disappointed for a long time. She wanted to meet. That night, I met Laura at a diner near the highway. She looked older than her age, with the tired calm of someone who had cried enough and moved past it. She said Justin had been siphoning money from Harold's company through fake suppliers, and Sierra's name was in the paperwork as one of the consulting partners. Whether Sierra understood what she had signed or not did not matter on paper. The trail existed. Laura slid copies of invoices and bank transfers across the table. I recognized Sierra's signature. I recognized the project codes. It hit me that my fiancée was not only cheating on me, she was helping commit financial fraud for the man she cheated with. This is the point where betrayal stops being personal and starts being dangerous. Laura said she was not ready to report it yet. She wanted more evidence and wanted to corner Justin first. She asked if I would help. I told her I would think about it. I was not doing this to save Sierra. I just needed to know how deep this went before I walked away. When I came home that night, Sierra was waiting again. Eyes swollen, glass of wine in her hand. She said she would end things with Justin. That she wanted to fix us. That it was over, that she would do anything. I let her talk until she said something that made everything go still. She said she was pregnant. She was not crying when she said it. She was watching me, measuring my face, waiting for softness. It did not come. I asked how far along. She said around 8 weeks. That lined up with the first hotel booking. She said she was not sure who the father was. The way she said it, flat and neat, like she was reading a line off a contract, made my hands shake for the first time. I left again. No slammed doors, no farewell speech. I needed distance because anger was no longer enough. This was not just betrayal anymore. It felt like everything in my life had been exposed to a toxic leak. Over the next days, Laura and I shared information. She was calm, smart, methodical, not driven by revenge but by the need to stop the damage. Together, we gathered enough documents to expose both Justin and Sierra if we chose. Then Harold called. He wanted a private dinner. He said Sierra had told him we were arguing about finances. He wanted us to fix things before the wedding. He had no idea what the real problem was. I said we would be there. That night, I sat alone and planned the order of events in my head like a blueprint. Who would speak? What would be revealed? What would come first? What would come last? This was not about drama. It was about clarity. The night of the dinner, I had not seen Sierra in 3 days. She kept texting. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she was angry. Sometimes she pretended nothing had happened. I did not answer. Her confusion walking into that restaurant would be the last thing I gave her. Harold chose an upscale place downtown. Private dining room. 8 chairs. Soft lighting. Food that looked like art more than dinner. I arrived early in the same navy suit I wore to our engagement party. It still held a faint smell of champagne I now associated with lies. At my place at the table, I set down a small black folder. Inside were copies of the invoices and authorizations Laura and I had gathered. And one more document, a paternity report. Sierra did not know I had gone to a private clinic. She did not know I had taken a DNA sample from her toothbrush and a strand of hair she left on my jacket. At 6 sharp, Harold walked in. Proud, confident. He still believed family dinners could fix anything. Sierra followed in a pale blue dress, wearing a smile that did not touch her eyes. Her gaze went straight to the folder, then back to my face. She did not ask what it was, but I saw her fingers twitch when she pulled out her chair. Justin came in next, a little late, like he wanted to make an entrance. He looked polished and sure of himself, as if trouble was something that only happened to other people. His wife, Laura, arrived last. She was not invited, but I had told her where and when. She sat down quietly, her jaw tight but her eyes calm. Harold started with small talk, wedding dates, venues, family plans. I answered like nothing was wrong. Sierra smiled and nodded, though her hands shook under the table. At this point, what would you have done in his place? Speak up or keep listening. After dessert, there was a pause. That was my opening. I leaned forward and slid the folder across the table to Harold. I told him there was something he should see before the wedding. He frowned but opened it. The first page listed unauthorized consultant transactions on HBC projects. Quarter 2. Sierra's signature appeared next to Justin's on several forms. The amounts were small enough to slip under the radar but large enough to show intent. Harold flipped page after page. His face changed, first confusion, then disbelief, then something like disgust. Sierra started talking fast. She said she did not know what those papers were. She thought they were routine. She did not understand the numbers. Justin went pale. Laura reached into her purse and set a flash drive on the table. She said it held recordings of phone calls where Justin and Sierra discussed those accounts. That was the first hit. Harold's hand shook as he poured himself a drink. He muttered that he had built his company from the ground up. That no one, especially his own daughter, would drag it through the mud for quick money. Sierra reached for him. He pulled his arm away. The room went quiet again. Then I reached for the folder and took out the last document, the paternity report. I said I had it done privately after Sierra told me she was pregnant. My voice was steady. The words were simple. The report said the child was not mine, it was Justin's. Sierra went still. Justin tried to deny it. He said it was fake, that I made it to ruin him. I told him I did not need to fake anything and named the clinic that had notarized the report. A child should never be used as a shield or a test. In this case, the truth still came out. Laura did not say a word. She just watched him fall apart. Harold stood up so fast his chair tipped over. He shouted at Sierra that she had embarrassed him, betrayed his trust, and put his company at risk. Justin tried to leave, but Harold stepped in front of him. For a second, I thought he would hit him. Instead, Laura delivered the final piece. She pulled one more paper from her bag, a printed email exchange between Justin and Harold's financial officer. It showed Justin using the company's name to secure unapproved loans through side accounts. Sierra's consulting signature was on those too. That tied everything together. The fraud, the fake suppliers, the loans, the affair. The room went quiet except for the sound of the air conditioner. I did not need to say anything. Every truth was already on the table. Harold's company would be under investigation within days. Justin's career was over. Sierra's name was on documents she could not talk her way out of. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. For the first time, she understood this was not about anger. It was about closure. Laura stood and left first. Justin followed, mumbling threats into the air. Harold stayed sitting, rubbing his temples. He asked me what I planned to do. I told him I was done with Sierra, but I wanted his company to survive if possible. He nodded slowly, almost ashamed. Then he said he would transfer ownership of one of the smaller divisions to me to protect it legally during the audit. It was a strange kind of repayment, not for what I lost, but for the silence I could keep. When the dinner ended, Sierra did not move. She sat staring at the empty glass in front of her, makeup cracking under the soft light. I walked out. I had already packed her things the night before. At home, her clothes, jewelry, makeup, and old letters were stacked in boxes by the door. The engagement ring sat on top. I left the house keys on the counter and drove to a hotel. When she came home later, she found an envelope taped to the door. Inside was the deed to the small apartment we first rented when we started dating, signed over to her. There was no note, no goodbye. It was not revenge. It was balance. The next morning, Harold called. His voice was rough. He said Justin had been fired and auditors were going through everything. He thanked me for not making it public. I told him the truth. I had not destroyed his family. It had already done that on its own. After that, I did not hear from him again. Sierra moved out quietly. Her father gave her one last check, enough to keep her from collapsing completely, but not enough to rebuild the life she had burned. She rented a small apartment and disappeared. 2 months passed. I buried myself in work. The division Harold gave me was folded into my own practice. By the third month, Cole Urban Design was officially registered. It was not big, but it was clean. No lies in the foundation. One rainy afternoon, Laura came to my office. She looked lighter, even with the tired eyes. She brought me a coffee and a folder. She told me Justin had left the state after the audit went public. His accounts were frozen. His license revoked. She filed for divorce and it was almost done. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain on the windows. I expected it to be awkward. It was not. We were just two people who had walked out of the same fire in different directions. Before she left, she said something I still remember. "We are the lucky ones. We got out before the whole building fell." Sometimes survival does not look like winning. It just looks like walking away early enough. Months passed. My company grew steadily. We landed a major redevelopment contract, one of the same projects Harold's firm had lost. The investors called it a fresh start. I called it symmetry. One night in December, Sierra reached out again. A message at 2 in the morning, just a photo, a hospital bed, an empty baby crib beside it, no caption. I did not reply. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Her handwriting was shaky but familiar. She wrote that Justin was gone. His accounts were empty. She had given birth to a boy and had not put his father's name on the certificate. She asked if I would ever consider meeting him, not as a father, just as someone who once loved her. I read the letter twice. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Whatever pity I had left was not love. It was just exhaustion. She was no longer part of my story. She was a footnote in the blueprint of who I became. Time kept moving. My team finished our first big project, an urban housing redevelopment. We called it Project 300 AM. That was not an accident. 3 in the morning was when everything cracked open and the truth walked through my front door. A year later, Cole Urban Design received a national award for Project 300 AM. When I stood on stage, I thought about the man I used to be that night. Tired, trusting, half asleep inside a life that was not real. He was gone. What replaced him was not bitterness. It was clarity. After the ceremony, I stepped out into the cool night. The streets were wet from a light drizzle, neon signs stretching across puddles. Somewhere in that city, Sierra existed. Maybe struggling. Maybe pretending she was fine. It did not matter. I pulled out my phone and deleted her last message for good. Then I looked at the skyline, steel and glass rising into the fog. Buildings that would not fall apart just because a door opened at 3 in the morning. The past was still there, but it was quiet now. For the first time since that night, I went home. Not to a house shared with someone else's secrets, but to a life that was completely mine. Lesson 1. When someone lies to your face and changes their story, pay more attention to their pattern than their words. Lesson 2. If your partner is more afraid of being found out by their family than by losing you, you are not their priority. You are their cover. Lesson 3. Cheating is not just about romance. It can bring financial, legal, and family damage that lasts longer than any affair. Lesson 4. Silence can be a powerful boundary. You do not always need to scream to end a toxic situation. Sometimes you just need to stop participating. Lesson 5. You are allowed to walk away when trust is broken beyond repair, even if other people tell you to work it out. Lesson 6. Building something new on honest ground, even if it is smaller at first, is better than living in comfort on top of lies. What do you think about the way he handled this? At what point would you have walked away in his place?